All right, let's get into this deep dive. We're looking at something that, feels like it's happening thousands of miles away, the Gaza-Israel conflict. But, and this is the crucial point, its effects, its ripples are being felt all over the world, and yeah, really directly right here in Bangladesh. This isn't just some distant news story. It's really about understanding how this conflict could fundamentally change things in your daily life and for the country as a whole.
Precisely. And our mission today for this deep dive is really to unpack those ripples, the economic, the social, the political currents that this conflict is sending towards Bangladesh. We're using the sources you shared, aiming to boil it down to the most vital insights so you can get informed quickly, without getting totally overwhelmed. It's about clear understanding.
Exactly. And just so you know where we're heading, we'll cover three main areas. First, the immediate economic stuff, especially fuel prices and, well, everything that stems from that. Second, something incredibly important, remittances, money coming in from abroad and how vulnerable that might be. And finally, the tricky humanitarian and political balancing act Bangladesh is facing. These are real, tangible effects happening now. Okay, so let's kick off with those immediate economic waves, the ones hitting closer to home, hitting your wallet. Almost as soon as the Gaza-Israel conflict escalated, we saw global oil prices jump, didn't we? Yeah. By several percentage points, nearing some pretty significant price points per barrel.
And for a country like Bangladesh, which imports, well, almost all of its refined petroleum, that spike wasn't just a number on a screen. It was an immediate hit to our foreign exchange reserves which, let's be honest, were already under quite a bit of strain.
Yeah, that's a key point.
And what's really striking is just how deep that reliance on imported fuel goes in Bangladesh. It's profound. This isn't just about paying a bit more for petrol for your motorbike or car.
Right.
When those global oil and gas prices surge, it means higher costs for petrol, for diesel, right across the board immediately. And those costs, they don't just stay at the pump.
No, exactly. It's not just a personal annoyance. That price hike sets off a kind of chain reaction, doesn't it? It pushes up transportation costs for, well, everything. Goods moving through Chittagong port, vegetables getting to your local bazaar. It even hits farming because, tractors and irrigation pumps run on this fuel.
Precisely.
So, okay, fuel costs are hitting transport, agriculture. What does that really boil down to for the average family beyond just, prices going up? Are there specific areas, maybe specific groups in Bangladesh that feel this even more sharply than others?
That's a really critical question because when businesses pass those higher fuel costs on, it fundamentally changes the cost of just living. We're talking a direct increase in commodity prices. Staples rice, lentils, cooking oil, everyday things, they just get more expensive. And for the government, it creates this really difficult choice. Either they absorb these costs with subsidies, which, puts even more strain on the national budget,
Right.
or they let the prices rise for consumers, which inevitably means higher inflation hitting everyone. And it's always the most vulnerable households, the ones already spending most of their income just on necessities, who feel that pinch the hardest. It squeezes them the most.
So as these economic pressures are building up, hitting family budgets, national reserves, there's this other really crucial angle to Bangladesh's economy,
Yeah.
right? One that's deeply connected to its people, the lifeline of remittances,
Yeah.
especially from the huge number of Bangladeshis working in the Middle East. We're talking about, around 1 crore, 10 million people, working in places like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, sending money home.
Absolutely. And this is where the human story connects directly with the national economy. It's vital. If you look at the bigger picture, there's a very real potential danger here. If this conflict spreads, or maybe just escalates further across the region, well, the job market in those Middle Eastern countries could shrink quite significantly, possibly. Or, priorities might shift away from foreign workers.
Yeah.
That would inevitably mean less income for our expatriate workers there. And the knock-on effect, a painful drop in the money they send back home to Bangladesh.
It's like an invisible shockwave, isn't it? You don't see it directly, but the impact is huge. We talk about GDP and foreign reserves, but this is literally millions of families relying on that money for, well, everything: food, school fees, building the house. Remittances aren't just pocket money. They're a massive driving force for Bangladesh's whole economy. A big chunk of GDP, vital foreign currency.
The key driving force, exactly.
So if that flow slows down for a long time, the impact on the national level would be pretty profound, potentially affecting everything from, say, big development projects to our ability to pay for imports. Are there, specific types of jobs our workers have over there that might be most at risk if things get more unstable?
Well, historically, sectors like construction, services, hospitality, they're often the first ones hit when there's regional uncertainty or conflict. And many Bangladeshi workers are employed in precisely those sectors. That makes them particularly vulnerable. A downturn could mean sudden job losses, maybe salaries getting delayed, or even people being forced to come home unexpectedly.
Hmm.
All of that directly cuts remittance flows.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's a domino effect. That lost income could ripple through entire villages back in Bangladesh, where many families depend almost entirely on those earnings from abroad.
Okay, so we've got the economic pressures, the human cost tied to remittances, and these often feed into or merge with really strong public feelings, right? Which pushes the government into this delicate humanitarian and political situation. Bangladesh has always shown deep sympathy for Palestine for a very long time. So when a conflict like this flares up so intensely, what does that actually do inside Bangladesh? What kind of pressure does the government face from its own people?
Well, an ongoing intense conflict like this definitely raises public awareness and public engagement massively. You see it pretty clearly in the form of, widespread protests, rallies, those human chain segregated kind that you see across the country. This public feeling, often coming from, deep religious and humanitarian concerns, naturally puts significant pressure on the government. Pressure to take an even stronger, maybe more vocal stance against Israel's actions.
Right. The government has to respond to that somehow.
It does. It essentially has to reflect that strong public support for the Palestinian cause.
That sounds like walking a very, very narrow tightrope, diplomatically speaking.
Yeah.
How does the government actually manage that, balancing that huge internal pressure from its citizens with, its wider international relationships and the need for stability? What are the specific challenges there?
That really is the absolute crux of the challenge. The
Uh,
government has to maintain this extremely cautious diplomatic balance. It's tricky. On one side, it absolutely must acknowledge and reflect, to some degree, that strong public sympathy for Palestine. That's vital for internal stability, for not alienating its own people. But on the other side, it also has to think about its relationships with other friendly Muslim countries, some of whom might have, shall we say, different levels of engagement or different takes on the conflict.
Okay.
And crucially, it needs to avoid doing anything that could seriously damage its broader international ties. Relationships with global powers, major trading partners, development allies, those are also essential for Bangladesh's interests. So it's this complex calculation, constantly weighing deeply held domestic values against, well, strategic foreign policy needs.
So wrapping this up, what does all this mean for you, our listener? I think this deep dive really shows that even a conflict happening far away, like in Gaza, has real tangible impacts right here, right at home. We've seen how it can hit the price of things in the market, how it can affect family income through those vital remittances, and how it even shapes our national policy as Bangladesh tries to navigate its path on the world stage.
Indeed. And if we step back and look at the bigger picture, while we don't know how this conflict will ultimately end, it's incredibly complex. Its waves, its effects will definitely keep reaching Bangladesh's shores. There's no doubt about that. It's just a powerful reminder, isn't it, of how interconnected everything is. Global events and our immediate personal lives. Understanding these connections, these far-reaching impacts, it isn't just about following the news. It's about getting a clearer view of how global forces shape your local reality. And maybe it helps inform how you think about both our own national issues and international affairs. It really makes you ask, doesn't it? In this connected world, how much can any country truly shield itself from global crises?